Dolores Brown,
Crystal
Andrews,
19,
23, murdered, missing.
Kathleen
Teresa
Leary,
Rosalind,
66,
11,
murdered.
missing.
Angela Corman, 29,
29,
murdered. Rochelle Bear, 22, missing. Evan Travers, 2, murdered. Tamra Keepness, 5, missing.
Mr. Speaker, I stand before you today to offer an apology to former students of Indian residential schools. The treatment of children in Indian residential schools is a sad chapter in our history.
1876. The Indian Act is passed imposing government control in native life. 1883. John A. Macdonald authorizes the creation of residential schools. 1884. Potlatches and other sacred ceremonies are prohibited. 1896. 45 residential and industrial schools are operating in Canada. 1906. Authorized removal of Aboriginal people from reserves near cities with populations of 8,000 or greater. 1907. Residential schools are reported dangerous to health by the Chief Medical Officer for Indian Affairs. 1914. Aboriginals in the Canadian West must obtain permission before wearing any Aboriginal costume in public. 1920. Mandatory residential school attendance for all Aboriginal children between 7 and 15. 1960. 10,000 students, approximately, are attending 60 residential schools in Canada.
Indigenous people have been cast as outsiders throughout Canadian history, residential schools being the greatest black mark. Within these schools, children were often treated with abuse and neglect. The conditions that the young children experienced resulted in lifelong damage, both physically and mentally.
A lot of other girls my age were in blue quills, but I only know one that survived. All the rest are dead today. Some died on the street, some died prostituting, others got into alcoholism and got run over by vehicles. But their children are still alive today, and I can't to this day wear a dress because of all the things that happened in the school. It was like a sanctuary for pedophiles, I would call it. That's probably why I blocked out so much of my life.
First and foremost, one of the primary mandates for the RCMP was to take the young Aboriginal children out of their reservations and put them into residential schools, which was really brought to light over the last couple of years. The RCMP's actual name in the Aboriginal language is Nitchakan, and it basically means those who take us away. The RCMP's reaction to missing women and also missing and murdered women in the past, I would say up until 3 or 4 years ago, was extremely minimal. That a lot of these families felt completely betrayed by the RCMP that did not do anything to help find their missing loved ones. The history and this strained relationship between the Aboriginal people and the RCMP is that when a loved one goes missing, the RCMP isn't necessarily the first ones that they go to for help, because a lot of their family members or parents were either raped or beaten or abused by an RCMP member, or their child was taken away.
Aboriginal women are clearly being outcast by Canadian society and overlooked by the enforcements that are meant to help. In a study by the RCMP in 2013, Aboriginal females make up 4.3% of the entire female population in Canada. This contributes to 11.3% of total missing Canadian females, estimating 1,455 women. Aboriginal females were found to be at 3 times higher risk of violence than non-Aboriginal women.
Really hard, and especially as a Canadian, I think it was really disheartening that just because it was Aboriginal people, I do feel if it was Caucasian women going missing at this alarming rate, that Harper's government would have definitely responded.
The number of victimized Aboriginal women has grown from 8% in 1984, rising to 23% in 2012. Non-Aboriginal numbers have declined slightly.
32% of Aboriginal women died as a result of physical beating, while only 17% of non-Aboriginal females experienced this. Only 2% of the reviewed cases were reported to be in any relation to organized crime, drug, or gang activities. 1/3 of Aboriginal female victims were murdered by an acquaintance compared to 1/5 of non-Aboriginal females. Simply because of race, Aboriginal women are 5 times more likely to a violent death and 3.5 more times likely to experience violence in life.
Human life has no price. The dignity each life possesses must be respected. Further injustices include overrepresentation of Aboriginal children in child welfare care, domestic and sexual violence, racism, poverty, and poor educational and health opportunities in Aboriginal communities. Discriminatory practices against women related to band membership and Indian status, and inadequate supports for Aboriginal people in cities. It is no question that Aboriginal women often suffer more difficult lives than the average Canadian woman, but this should not stop them from having equal treatment when it comes to the investigation of their death or disappearance. We as fellow Canadian citizens are called to protect the human rights of these women and stand with them in solidarity. As members of the human family, these women have the right to have access to programs that protect them from any dangers they are exposed to, and have equal treatment in the law system compared to any other Canadian. As Pope Francis has said, all human persons, all of us, are important in God's eyes. We must strive to meet this ideal, as Aboriginal women deserve the same rights that all humans deserve. The promise for a national inquiry into missing and murdered Aboriginal women is just the first step.
Will be the creation of a national public inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
And I think families for years and years and years have been wanting this national inquiry. And I think, we're still in the very early stages of it.
The Human Rights Watch has created a letter to the Liberal government stating what needs to be included in the inquiry. The inquiry should include police misconduct, safe participation of the most marginalized, including sex workers, criminalized, and transgender women, and the outcome of the inquiry should be action.
The launch of the national inquiry, I think they are taking the first step towards responsibility and in really taking this issue seriously and making a commitment to hearing out the families. These recommendations will hopefully not fall under deaf ears.
As Canadians, we need to hold both the government and the RCMP accountable for their actions while standing in solidarity with the loved ones of the missing and the murdered.
We must navigate the seas of Aboriginal history to discover the future for Canada.